I'm Aiden. I'm a student from Year 1 US College, and I'm also a member of SG Climate Rally. Climate change has been a big topic that we've discussed today, and I'm glad for that. I think it's something that me and my peers feel really deep anxiety about. And you mentioned that we want SG to be around forever. I would like that too, but in order for that to happen, we must reverse the climate emergency that we're seeing today. And so as Minister for Trade and Industry, I wanted to ask how Singapore intends to confront the elephant in the room, which is our large fossil fuel industry that we host, given that we want to be responsible and pull our weight in dealing with the climate crisis as well. Thank you.
Aiden, on climate change. Now, yes, we have a big petrochemical industry, but we also have to be realistic. How is our petrochemical industry performing? In fact, this is one of the things that when we went to the Paris treaty discussions, for a small country like us, we felt very much done in. Because of the size of our GDP, population, geographical area, we have that much quota. Our petchem industry is one of the most efficient, one of the cleanest in the whole industry. And we benchmark ourselves. If you know the terminology, they will do the first quota, second quota, third quota, and then benchmark. Most of our industries are in the first quota. But the carbon budget is counted against us, rather than the consumer. If tomorrow we don't produce, so we ask the people in the discussion room, tomorrow if we don't produce, where would all these same petrochemicals be produced? They will be produced somewhere else in the world. And more likely also to be under conditions which are perhaps more pollutive than the current conditions. But we do have this issue. So notwithstanding that, we take our carbon responsibilities very seriously. Today, when EDB goes out to try to win investment and create jobs for the next generation, we have to take into account not just our land constraint, our manpower constraint, our fiscal constraint, so on and so forth. We also have to take into account the carbon constraint. There are industries that may want to come into Singapore and which we may not be able to even accept them. So I give you an example. Singapore is a data hub. Many internet companies, many digital companies would like to set up their data centers in Singapore. But data centers require huge amount of energy. Huge amount of energy requires huge amount of carbon budget. Are we able to attract those? If we are unable to attract those, what does it mean for our economy, our position as a global hub for the digital services? Now, these are difficult questions that cannot be answered just because we are philosophically wedded to one consideration and not the rest. In fact, in all such difficult decisions, we have to ask ourselves, how do we remain competitive as an economy to attract those investments, create good jobs for our people? How do we fulfill our carbon budget obligations, not just for this generation, for the next generation? So, how are we going to manage our carbon budget? That's why the last year during the Energy Week, I spent a lot of time talking about this. I said that if water has been the story for the last 50 years, energy will be the story for our next 50 years. In the last 50 years, we learned the important lesson to never be held ransom by a sole source. We make sure that we continue to diversify our supply of water so that we can hold our own fate in our own hands. We have done very well in that, from 3 reservoirs to 17 reservoirs. From having to import most of our water supply to now being able to open up new sources of supply from new water to desalination and so forth. And we continue to explore the technologies for us to do better. But all this require us to solve the energy puzzle. How do we have sufficient energy supplies for Singapore? And life is fair. In Singapore, we don't have earthquake, we don't have typhoon. That means that we have no geothermal, we have no wind power, and not much. The only thing that we have is solar. However, 80% of the time in Singapore, the skies are overcast. The efficiency of the solar panels when they are working at the current technology level is about 20 to 25% for the best of class. So what can we do to unlock the energy constraint, or rather the carbon constraint, for the next 50 years so that we can continue to attract the industries, create good jobs for our people, and yet at the same time manage our future carbon budget? There are many things that we can do, and I always share with the audience that for us, climate change carbon budget is not about 50, 100 years later where the seawater starts rising. For us, it's a here and now challenge. If we cannot manage that, we can't even attract the industries in to create the jobs for the next generation. But there are many things that we can do. Number one, think of how we can diversify our energy sources. So we have gone from oil and gas to LNG, which is one of the cleanest fossil fuel. Number two, we can significantly try to improve our solar panel coverage. In fact, I think by the end of this year, if I'm not wrong, Kunien will know, we have 1 in every 2 HDB flat with at least some solar panel, and we will try to scale as much as we can, right? So those are what I call supply. But we need to manage the demand as well. I always ask ourselves how we can reduce significantly the energy consumption for cooling needs. 1/3 of our energy consumption goes to cooling needs for the residential and commercial. You look at this room. Actually, it's a very sad room. Why? You look at the aircon for this room. We aircon the whole place, but actually, we only need to aircon 2 meters from the floor. Now, there's a huge amount of energy that can be saved if we design our buildings and our rooms properly. And that goes from the macro urban design to the precinct design to the materials used. So we are going to, that's why during the Energy Week, we have set off a grand challenge for Singaporeans to come up with ideas on how we can reduce our energy consumption in order for us to release the constraint for us to still have our fair share of industries and so forth. Now, finally, your question is that, are we thinking of a post-fossil fuel future? Yes, we are. Because we know where the trend of the world is going, right? We are just one small part on the global economy. Many of the big companies, be it ExxonMobil, be it Shell, and so forth, they are all thinking of a future beyond fossil fuels. How fast we can get there? It all depends on how fast we are able to adopt those technologies. But are we thinking about it? Yes, certainly. But when the time comes, it will mean that our economic structures will fundamentally be quite different. It means that the type of jobs that we can create for our own people will be quite different. And all this will not be able to be done overnight, because as you shift the industry structure, we must have a care about the jobs that are being displaced, and these are jobs that many of our people are working in. So yes, we are looking at that, and we are thinking of how to make sure that we insulate ourselves against all these difficult problems that may come and confront us. But we can all do something to unlock the energy and carbon puzzle that's confronting us today. Okay, we're happy to take